Follow this dirt road in the Gatineau Hills north of Ottawa, and you come to a rural cemetery marked with a rustic fence and a flagpole, marking the final resting place of a former Prime Minister. Lester B. Pearson's black and grey headstone is in good shape, but the graves of Canada's 14 other deceased Prime Ministers aren't as lucky, according to newly released reports. Follow this road past the lush greenery and headstones in Beechwood Cemetery in Ottawa, and you find a less fortunate Prime Minister.
Welcome to the grave of Canada's First World War Prime Minister, Sir Robert Borden. Now, as you look around, you might say, this grave doesn't look like it's in bad shape, and for the most part it isn't. But it's very typical of what you'd find at other prime ministerial grave sites. For starters, you can see that there's mold and moss growing on the grave markers. It's becoming harder and harder to read the inscriptions. This is typical at a lot of grave sites. You'll also notice the granite cross behind me. That actually has some cracking in the back of it. It's hard to see, but it's there. Repairing all this is not going to be difficult, but it's also not going to be easy. These grave markers can't be just power washed. You have to use water and a soft brush. No detergents. That would damage the grave markers. This is all typical. It happens quite often. The problem is, no one's too sure how much it's going to cost to repair all of this.
A short drive down the road is another prime ministerial gravesite. Close to the entrance of the cemetery is the grave of Sir Wilfrid Laurier.
In the 1990s, preservation work focused on the 9 bronze sculptures surrounding this monument. 9 because those were the number of provinces during Laurier's time as Prime Minister. But focus now has shifted to the stones at the base of this monument. Rust spots have been identified at various areas around this monument. Now, if the rust can just be washed away, that would save taxpayers and Parks Canada quite a bit of time and money. If not, there's a possibility that sometime in the future, all this stonework may have to be replaced.
So let's go back down the dirt road to the rural cemetery with the rustic fence and flagpole and visit with the former Prime Minister who is buried there.
Lester B. Pearson's grave in Wakefield, Quebec is in fairly good condition, but the same can't be said of other Prime Ministers' grave sites around the country. In some cases, the grave markers themselves are being obscured by mold and moss, so no one's too sure who is really buried there. In other cases, maintenance issues identified 7 years ago have yet to be dealt with, because in the absence of a formal agreement between Parks Canada and the landowners, no one's too sure who is responsible for what. And in other cases, the grave markers themselves are showing signs of aging, blistering and cracking. Now, Parks Canada realizes all this and actually has a conservation plan ready for the next 4 years. That should take the department right through to 2016, just in time for 2017, which would be Canada's 150th birthday. For Post Media News, I'm Jordan Press.